I had kind of the opposite happen in Australia when my wife and I were there. They have these public bathrooms there, and they're those cool ones where you walk up and there's a sensor and the door opens for you. You go inside, the door closes for you, light turns on, music comes on. It's a very nice experience. So I'm in there and it's so pleasant with this nice music. I'm like not in any hurry and it's all automated. So I'm just doing my thing. And it had been quite a bit of time, I suppose, because all of a sudden the light turns off, toilet flushes, and the door starts to open. And I'm there, and this old senior guy, because the light's off, backs on, starts to take pants, or like he's grabbed his pants, and so he didn't get them all the way down, but I am like, oh, sorry. And I just put my hands on his ass and basically pushed him out of the door, pushed him back out. Like not his bare ass, but like he was going, and I had to push him out. And all of a sudden the door closes, light comes on, music, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what just happened? So I quickly did the paperwork and just snuck out of there. And
welcome to another episode of Efficient by Design podcast. Today I've got Dustin, my good friend and storefront manager, and my brother and friend Brad Reamer in his full Oilers regalia. He's a fan, to say the least.
She's almost a bigger fan than I am. I wouldn't say I'm like a crazy super fan, but no. I mean, I love the Oilers. I mean, we've been watching them since we were little kids. So
like we were watching in the 80s during the 4-year kind of dynasty of Gretzky and the magic that happened. I remember being our friends at the Pinches, and she made butter tarts and popcorn. And we'd go over there with Dad and watch hockey. It's awesome.
So good.
That's nice.
I'd be curious. So number 44, if anybody knows, they're not. This person isn't with the Oilers anymore, so maybe they can comment below and see if they know who 44 is.
Yeah, that's great. So we are going to kind of step away from our history that we've been doing and jump into just a bunch of kind of storytelling. So to kick things off, how about let's start off with the most scared that we've ever been on the job site. So I can kind of jump into this first. There's two that kind of came to mind to me right away. And I think one I might have told to a degree already was where Chad, one of my lead hand employees, had a really bad fall on our job site. And it was terrible. It was so gross. Like you're wondering if someone is dead. And because I think I've talked about it before, I won't go into it in great detail.
Honestly, I don't. Has he talked about it? Do you guys remember? Like, I don't remember. I've been waiting for this one because this is like one of the biggest.
Were you there?
I was there.
I wasn't there.
You weren't there, and because I thought maybe someday we would have Chad on, and then we would be able to have the conversation with him. So that I don't think you've actually talked about it.
Okay, well I'll kind of get into it then. And honestly, he wouldn't remember.
Yeah,
he doesn't remember, which was scary. So anyway, scenario is we were building in a place called Heritage Hills, this really high-end development area with gorgeous, like 220-degree view of the lake up on the mountainside, crazy foundation, really cool place. And we were having our floor sheathing being delivered. We had foundation done, basement slab done, basement framing done, and we had the floor joists all on and rim board on. Everything was blocked and braced and ready to go. And we had floor sheathing being delivered. And it was a big floor. We had, I think, almost 3 lifts of 3/4-inch gold edge TNG being delivered. And we had staged areas and got it all prepped to have the plywood set down on the floor joists. So again, things are all good and solid, and we're going to put them in kind of in a row across the floor joists. They're all on different sections of joists. And the truck that showed up, it was like a drywall truck. So he could manipulate the forks. They were powered. So he could swing the forks either direction and he could tip them up and down. Great control. And the driver was my favorite driver. He was so quick, so smooth, fantastic. I've had my fair share of like really bad, scary deliveries and drivers with cranes and pump trucks. But this guy was phenomenal. He's super good. So the way that things were, the truck came down off the main road, kind of down to the basement elevation, and then was craning the plywood up onto the floor. So he didn't have a great view of the floor. And we're up top and telling him where to go. So the whole plan was just to set these lifts down, and the forks would go between the joists, and then they could just swing his forks out. So he had put 2 down, and his third one, he was a little bit off and a little crooked, and the forks hung up on one of the joists. So he couldn't get his forks out. So we're like, okay, pause, time out, don't do anything. Go have a peek underneath and see what's going on. So I go
When you
and
say
look.
the lifts of plywood, just explain how much is a lift of plywood to some people, and how much does that weigh?
I think they're 2,500 pounds in a lift. So it's like, 4x8 by usually, how tall are they? 4 feet? A full lift, something like that. So when you pull a sheet off, it close to stands up on edge to the same height. So yeah, it's close to 4 feet close to 4 feet high.
So a ton,
So-
how much is a ton?
2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds. So each one is,
Yeah, they're heavy.
Okay.
Yeah. So he got his forks pinched in there a little bit. So, okay, time out, don't move, don't do anything. Okay, great. Go over there, look underneath. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, lift the whole thing, just go straight up. So I'm giving signals. And I was super picky on the job sites too, was that one person gives signals to the driver, to the operator, and they do what we say. Nothing else. You don't, if you want to do an operation movement in a method that I'm not describing, you say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to boom in instead of booming up and cabling down or whatever, depending on your situation. So I was very clear with my drivers and delivery guys. We'd have meetings. If I was a new guy, I'm like, hey, this is how I operate. You follow my signals. That's it. If you have an issue with it, we stop, we talk, you tell me why you want to do it your way. That's fine. But no, none of this, like you do it differently than I'm asking for. So I go in there, I look, okay, yeah, this is the issue. Lift it up. We'll put some dunnage. We're messing around with it. Lift it up, put it down. So a couple times of trying, it was still stuck. Okay, time it. Chad, go have a peek down there. And so Chad, so I'm like, okay, stop, don't move anything. Chad, go have a look from that side. So Chad goes over there and is looking, and the driver mistakenly thinks, oh, I'll just try this one other thing. I'm just going to see if I can just pull on the forks and boom in a bit, which he should not have done. So Chad is down there looking at this pinch point or whatever, and the driver booms in and pulls. So there's the sheathing and the truck. He pulls on the forks on the forks of the machine, and by doing that, all the eye joists that are 11/7/8 tall get racked over and fall down on their side, and all of that mass at 2,500 pounds now basically free falls the height of the joist, and the joists are now laying on their side. So they come down, and that sheathing goes through those joists like it's nothing. There's no strength, obviously, when they're laying on their side. And it just blows right through the floor.
Yeah, and this isn't a crawl space underneath. This is
it's 10 foot.
a 10-foot.
And
basement.
is Chad out in open floor space, or is he over a wall?
Is open floor space. So he's out in the open joist space.
Yeah.
So there's 3 lifts there, and he's out there in kind of the middle one. Joists get racked over. The floor sheathing free falls the height of the floor joist, and then it just carries right on through. And it was like a bomb went off. It was so loud because all of a sudden you've got, I don't know how many, there were 8 joists or whatever that were underneath TJIs, and they go down sideways, and there are bearing walls in there. So as this goes through, things are just breaking, and there's joists that are cantilevering on bearing walls, and joists are flipping up, and there's shrapnel.
Where were you?
I was kind of standing on the side.
Were you at the other end of the floor?
Yeah, like I was. Yeah. So most of the people that I think were up there
Like,
were standing.
you doing your job, or?
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah. I was actually, I think, standing over top of the, like, kind of more on the concrete, right on the outside wall, so I maybe had 1 foot on, so super stable.
Yeah. Because I feel like I was the only one right there.
You were, right there, but I think there were several of us that were just on the outskirts, just kind of like watching.
The floor span was roughly how long?
I'm just trying to remember the direction that things were. I mean, we're talking 15, 18 years ago, so I don't remember the actual bearing. I just remember floor sheathing disappearing, joist breaking and getting cantilevered up. The other 2 lifts now from all the destruction, those ones collapse, those go down. Chad's in the middle of it. I'm away enough that where I'm standing isn't the joists that are failing. And so I just watch it all. I watch this lift go, this go, and Chad actually gets kind of cantilevered and thrown up 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah, he didn't just fall through.
No,
like that's
like,
what I remember is like that slow motion, Chad just like, he tries to get the best footing he can, but there's nothing he can do. There's nothing that he could have jumped to.
No,
like everything around him just turned in. And it was like toothpicks. The amount of carnage and splinters and stuff from that now almost 4 tons of material just snapped everything. And there was like literally shrapnel, joist flying up. And like Luke said, like a teeter-totter catapulted Chad straight up into the air. Luckily,
So, yeah.
after all the plywood had already gone through, it flung him up.
He was just after. Yeah.
Just after.
So he gets flung up and he then just disappears into the midst of this hole now that is come out of nowhere in this floor system. And I'm watching it all. So I'm just crash, crash, boom, Chad airborne. And now he's falling headfirst down to frozen soil in the basement.
And my mind is spikes of doom.
And there was, absolutely. It's like there's sheets all over the place and spikes and he's coming down on top of it. And there was a space.
Well, there was
where he landed,
braces down there, and there was one little space. So there's joists in every which direction and bracing and plywood that kind of stayed banded and landed on its corners and jammed into the dirt. Chad comes down maybe 2 feet away from the exterior wall, right on his head, straight down on his head. And he's similar build to you. He's a solid, thick guy, and
super good looking, cute, toned, washboard, and
he comes down right on his head and like head into the ground. You know, like stacked right on top of his neck and shoulders. Oh. And just, I remember the sound of just this, of his body, just, you know, all the wind came out of him and he hits and kind of crumples on himself and then kind of falls onto his side. And there's this, this one little like 4-foot area where there's no lumber, joist, bracing where he landed.
Like that was honestly, when I saw where he landed, I'm like, that was Chad. Like that was the hand of God being like, I'm going to just put you right in this little spot. I'm going to knock you out, but I'm not going to skewer you on all the carnage around here. It's crazy.
So I slide down braces and I get down there right away. And he's still in this crumpled heap kind of on his head and looking super awkward. And you're like, your first aid, out cold. Yeah. And so people from the other side of the site are screaming. Everyone comes running and yelling. And so the first thing is like, well, we got to make sure he's like, you know, a few things. He's got to be able to breathe. He's got to have his airway. We also don't want to move him too much if he's broken his neck or his back, but he's in this like crumpled heap, half on his head and his hip. So we're like carefully move him to kind of lay him flat and get him so he's like in a decent position. And then also he's like, he starts to take breath. I'm like, okay, he's coming around and he opens his eyes and he's kind of coming to you like, oh, Chad, don't move. No, I think I'm okay. Like, don't move. You just had a big fall. Like, no, I'm fine. And he's a strong dude. And he just pushes through us and gets to his feet, stands up. Like, dude, what are you doing? Man, are you okay? He's like, can't hurt steel.
Yes, that was his line. Like, again, it's something that you would see in a movie and you'd be like, oh, that's the dumbest thing. What a stupid movie. But he legit stood up, pushed us away, and was like, can't hurt steel. First thing he said.
Yeah. Like, he's just not having it. We're calling the ambulance. We got them on the way. And he's like, oh, I need to go have a smoke. He just pushes through us and gets his cigarettes out.
And he's out of it. Like he's not like saying that stuff in like it's just the natural thing that was just like shock was spewing this out of his mouth. He's like, can I still need a smoke?
Yeah.
And then as over time, like obviously he became more, there was more clarity and he was kind of himself.
I would say the reverse. When he jumped to his feet, can't hurt steel, grabs a smoke, it was like regular Chad. I'm like, did this even happen?
Yeah.
And he walks up to his truck to have a smoke. And I'm like, I'm staying right by his side. And then he started to wig out.
Sure.
Then he's like, what happened?
Yeah.
You fell through the floor. Ambulance is coming. Like, don't move. He's like, so was I up there? Yeah, you were up there.
Oh, I remember that very clearly. I remember people telling him exactly in detail
over and over.
And that's when we realized how more severe it was.
And he's like,
oh, you're not.
Shoulder's a little sore. Okay, I'm fine. So yeah, ambulance comes, we get him in there, and we go to the hospital, and he's getting checked out. And yeah, concussion, compressed vertebrae. I think he tore something in his shoulder a bit. Overall, end of the day, he ended up being okay. Like I think he had mobility issues with his shoulders for a couple months. And it was funny too, because Chad he was not a guy to go on the roof. He didn't like walking on the floor joists, you know, when they got their wobble, he's like, no. And it was actually after years of working with him, he was finally getting comfortable, you know, keeping his knees bent and scooting along and running the joists and being fine. And then this happened. He's like, no, I'm not the roof guy. I'm not the guy walking the joists. He can frame like the wind and he's phenomenal, but he's like, I'm not the guy be up high walking.
I'm curious, areas. 15 years later, if that still haunts him, if he still thinks that, or if that's and I mean, honestly, I think one of the things that I remember, because it's funny how when something like that happens, everybody has a bit of their own angle in what they remember clearly or not. I remember a little bit of the terror of as it happened, things was settled, and then we're all converging on Chad, the different people yelling at Chad to see if he was okay. I remember Justin's voice, like this kind of yell scream, like Chad, and then getting there, and then other people be like, oh God. It's just that panicky, that just gross feeling of panic and just terror,
So that was the most scared I've been for somebody else.
Yeah.
And to watch it happen. And I think I stayed pretty calm through it. And I watched where he fell, and I was, very concerned. But I'm like, I gotta be kind of a rock here to like create some calm and some peace and make some good decisions. But that was terrifying.
And so you don't receive a bunch of flack for this. I'm a little curious, because when we did talk about moving him when he was you might have some people that are like, you never move a guy if he's down there. So I'm curious, what actually, did we make a mistake by moving him? Is that the right thing to do? What actually is the protocol for if someone has landed and is like out unconscious and they could have a neck injury, spinal, all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, my understanding in that sort of situation is that you move them as little as possible, but they have to be able to breathe.
Right.
And if they're like crumpled heap on their head up against a wall and their airway is half blocked and they can't get breath, it's like, let's carefully move them down, get them like laying on their back kind of flat and like, support them, move them as little as possible. Like that was kind of the priority that I went, because as I was looking, I'm like, I know, like, and right away he's thirsty. Like, you don't give him water, concussions, you don't let them drink anything. Like there's all these kind of practices. So we were very strategic, call the ambulance, make sure he actually goes. We drove guys to the hospital sometimes, instead of ambulance for other issues. You got a nail in your
When the
knee
homeowner fell off the top of the thing and he landed and he was unconscious, we did a really good job of making sure that he didn't move at all. I remember everyone's like, he woke up after a bit and his was like, that was terrible.
What's terrible? That was one of the most sour jobs we ever did. So
sour.
And we took good care of that guy, but he was such a jerk.
I know. It's like, again, you never want that to happen to someone.
Wait a minute. You can't just circle around so the homeowner falls. What do you mean?
When was this?
Because again,
we're doing the foundation. He was dehydrated. He was putting in anchor bolts, and
it was at least 10 feet.
Yeah.
It was at least 10 feet that he was up.
It would have been about 11 because it was 10-foot foundation. Footings, there was no backfill yet. So it's close to 11 feet. And he was just like putting in anchor bolts, dehydrated, and just like he went down.
How old?
On his head. Oh, he was a younger guy.
Mid-30s?
I don't think he was even that old. He's around close to 30, I would think.
And this was in
Peachland. It was actually a job I got brought into to help a friend who has got life circumstance. Things went totally sideways. He's like, hey, I got this job for family. Can you come and help? I got to deal with some stuff. And like, Kate will come in and take care of it. And it was the owner's nephew or son that was kind of like the GC on the job. And he was like a highly educated guy, but had no trades experience. So huge chip on his shoulder, thought tradesmen were just dumber than a sack of hammers. And
I felt like he had to hold our hand through all the steps.
And how often do you carry a sack of hammers?
I don't know. You need to make a sweet belt where you can just sack of hammers.
We carried a pail of all our old beater hammers for stripping foundations. That's the closest we ever had.
A pail of hammers.
Yeah. So maybe we should switch it to that. Dumber than a pail of hammers.
You should change the name of Akribis to Sack of Hammers.
Sack of hammers. But yeah, I remember whenever, because you have this look on your face. Luke gets a look on his face when he's like, I'm not having it. I'm done. And we're not going to have
that face.
And now we're going, and he gets the business voice on. and when those two would like lock horns, it was just like, oh, Luke's going to just give it to him. But at the same time, you have to be careful and respectful. He is, you know, kind of the homeowner guy. But yeah, he passed out and I remember he was on the ground. We got a big tarp to shade him because he was direct sunlight.
Super hot.
Hot. And he had landed on the ground. And I remember he had a bunch of punctures all over in his arm because there was a bunch of nails because we had been stripping stuff. And yeah.
And he landed on like 1x4s that had like 2 1/4 ring nails in them. And he landed, he had little puncture in his shoulders and stuff.
It was terrible.
Okay, wait.
But guess what happened after that? He wasn't on site. And we finished the job.
He accused me of stealing stuff.
Was it a case of
get it together?
You're working and just tired of the abuse that this guy's dishing out and kind of feeling a sense of like justice of, wanting to win an argument or something with this guy and get him out of your hair.
Yeah.
And then he just so happens to fall over the foundation wall.
See, he wasn't much of a, the job was still fairly young, new at the time. Like we were only on foundation walls.
Yeah.
So things got way worse later.
Oh.
So it's like this like afterthought. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy was during the job.
Yeah.
I remember he fell and that was awesome. I mean, that was terrible. It's terrible.
Luke was right there too. And I don't know why. I don't know. It's like that episode of The Office when Michael falls into the koi pond and Jim doesn't go out and grab him. It was kind of like that.
Oh, but there's a few things. I remember him calling me on weekends. I put a level on your windows. They're all way out of level. It's just totally garbage. I'm like, they're way out of level. We each square and level things are like bang. And you realize there is some allowance for like window openings are oversized, a rough opening, so we can true them up. And if they're plus or minus like 1/8 of an inch, plenty good enough. And you go, and everything was like bang on. And he's like got a funky level he's checking things with. And we're framing the roof. We get the trusses up. Oh my goodness. It pissed me off so much. Cause I'm like making sure I'm professional and respectful with this guy, standing my ground, acknowledging the reality he has no building experience, but he's talking like he's been doing this forever. And he's like, yeah, your trusses, he calls me on the weekend, your trusses, your roof lines are all screwed up. Your hips are totally out. There's like a 2-inch jog in the hip line. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, this corner. I'm like, no. Okay, so that's not framed yet. There's flat hip and flat rafters that go into that. They're going to raise that plane 1.5 inches, and then they will terminate to line up with the hip line up top where there's not knockdown trusses. And no, there's a huge jog and it's wrong. You have to fix it. Let me frame it. I'm not done. It will be great. And so we get the back there, we frame it, and he wasn't there that day. And then that night he calls me. He's like, I'm glad to see you fix that roof. That was a mess before.
Oh man.
So now you can understand a little bit of why the fall was not, again, I sound like such a dink, but
you make sure he's okay.
yes.
But then you walk away and you're kind of like,
Yeah. Especially when you realize he's okay and he's going to be okay.
yeah.
Then you have that feeling. If he was actually legit injured, broke, you'd feel terrible. But the fact that he had that, it was a little bit of, that's what happens. You shouldn't be here.
Yes. You shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that was
Sorry.
good.
Yeah.
But I had when you were talking about the joist falling over, and I had an experience when we were framing that fire hall in Grand Prairie. And I was in the trusses. I don't think you were there. You had already gone to jazz school. I was in the trusses and I was laying out the 1x4 strapping, and I was kind of on my own, just a long stretch. And so I'm kind of just, turned into a robot after I get 3/4 of the way across. And I'm getting a little, from being hunched over and squatted and you're kind of shuffling like a crab across, I'm starting to get a little lackadaisical about what my pouch is hitting and everything. And I remember I think I had my pencil over my ear or something. And so I'm kind of shuffling through and grabbing the pencil, and I'm going to just mark the 1x4, and I'm leaning too much on the truss. And for whatever reason, it starts to go over, and it's just dominoes, and it comes down and hits me in the hip. Somehow I'm knocked off balance.
The trusses are falling over?
Yes.
Okay.
And it hits me and knocks me out over, like not out cold, but knocks me out of the trusses, and I'm falling. And I don't know what happened in the moment, but maybe like the little Spider-Man moment.
Yes.
I grab the truss and I still have my pencil in my hand, and I'm just hanging there, and it was quite high. And Jules, our boss, is quite low.
It's stocky, dude.
Yeah. And so I can't remember how high off the floor it was, but not your typical height, right? And I'm hanging there by one hand, and I have enough time to put the pencil back in my ear and hold with two hands.
Sheesh.
And just go, Jules.
I fell.
He had to come out, get a whole ladder, and he still couldn't reach me to try and get up, to try and get my feet and help me down, because I couldn't just let go.
Hang on. He got a ladder and couldn't reach you? How
That's right.
high off the ground were you?
I can't remember.
So this isn't a normal, this
fire
was
hall. It's like high.
Oh, right. Okay, I get
So
it.
fire trucks need to be in there and everything.
Oh, geez.
And I'm hanging there like that. And he's scrambling down below me as I'm just hanging on. And thankfully he was able to help me down, and it was totally fine.
The fact that you
But-
held on with one hand, like that's hard enough to do yourself with a probably loaded tool belt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that's
Well, how old were
impressive,
you then?
actually.
Oh, I was young and could handle
Like
anything. 20. It
Early
was 20.
20s.
Okay.
20, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's very similar to, except I didn't have anybody to help me on my house because my main living
yes.
space
This is a good one.
20 feet about tall.
Yeah.
17, I think. It's at 17, I think. Anyway, and I was up there at nighttime because the inspector, I had to redo all the strapping because what I had done in the trusses is I had strapped it with the leftover keyway.
Oh, that's so dumb.
And then they were like, the keyway, we don't like
You
it.
just got a cranky inspector.
Yeah,
This
who
is
I
always good
loved.
practice. Yeah. But he was just like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it. And so he made me replace it all with 2x4. And so I was doing that at nighttime because I had an inspection the next day. So I had to get it done all by myself. And I had scaffolding.
Great recipe here.
Yep.
Say that again. You had what?
Scaffolding? I don't know. How are you supposed to say it?
Scaffolding. I don't know.
I think
Scaffolding.
scaffolding, it makes sense.
Scaff? What's
Holding
scaff?
your scaff? What are you talking about? Anyway,
Anyway.
you have
I'm trying to help.
scaffolding.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
support.
Yeah. Scaffolding I had up there. And so I'm not in the trusses. I'm on the bottom underneath it, rolling myself because I had the wheels on it. So I'm all by myself and I'm rolling along there. But to get to it, I had to be standing on, so there was a platform and then I had to stand on top of the actual scaffolding, just on the bars.
On the rail, on
the
the edge,
rails. And I've got my gun up there and I'm reaching for this one. I'm like, oh, I can reach that one.
no, you
but
can't.
because of the wheels, as I'm reaching, the
No,
whole
you can't.
scaffolding,
Rolls
it
away.
just rolls away. And I'm left there hanging by myself with the gun in my hand and kind of
By
like,
one hand?
no,
And you-
I kind of have my elbow wrapped around one,
Okay.
holding the gun, and then with the other one. So now I'm freaking out. I'm like, no one's here. There's no one to yell for. I'm by myself. And
Concrete floor.
yeah. And I'm 17 feet up. And I'm like, okay. So I either let go and I just break my ankles. But the nice thing is the hose of my gun was kind of wrapped around a bit of the corner of the scaffolding. And so I'm just sitting there. And this is not me in my early 20s when I'm a buck 75. Like I'm 225 pounds hanging there with a full tool belt and a gun. I don't have time. I'm not like, so, but luckily I'm able to pull with my gun pull and the air cord, air hose pulls the scaffolding a little bit closer to me. Like, oh, it's a little closer. And I reached with my toe now with my boot and I could just touch my toe to the scaffolding enough to like get it a little bit. And I slowly pulled it and then I got it. I was able to hook my foot on it, pull the scaffolding down just
You're
in
amazing.
time. Like
That is a terrifying moment.
Yep.
And you did it.
I did it. I survived. No fall. Not a single injury, actually.
Okay, I gotta tell one more. That was one of the most amazing acrobatic saves I've ever seen and been around. And I actually, to be truthful, I didn't see it happen. I saw the
Oh,
before
here
and the
we
right
go.
after. It was Daniel Braun. So Daniel Braun worked with us for years. He's a wiry guy. He's like a wicked longboarder and kind of climber mountaineer kind of guy.
Yeah, craftsman.
And yeah,
builder,
and
yeah.
we were doing a floor system, and he was hand nailing hangers on a beam. So he's on his knees and reaching forward and nailing these hangers on. I don't know if he got lightheaded or what happened. We lost his balance. He fell forward into the basement, and as he's falling, he managed to do make a front roll and come back around and grab the back side of the beam.
What?
So Daniel's there on his knees 1 second. Next, I look back and it's just knuckles hanging on the back of the beam. I'm like, what just happened? And he explained after the fact he fell face forward and then scrambled along the underside of the beam as his feet are coming around and managed to reach up and plant the top of the back of the beam and then be hanging there.
Wow.
And then we pulled him back up.
Sheesh.
Completely impossible. It was
Yeah.
Totally bizarre.
He was also our very first drummer
Mm.
for Groundswell back in the day.
Yeah.
And a fantastic one at that.
He's the first.
gem.
He's the first person I've seen bomb a hill in the full leather downhill skateboarding outfit.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw that, I'm like, this man is insane.
Such a quiet, soft-spoken, gentle guy. And then, straight line bombs. On Giant's Head, ride the Giant longboard race.
Yep.
The first year they did it, he was the one to test the safety netting in the corner. So he just bombed straight off corners into the trees. insane. Yeah.
So cool.
Crazy guy.
So cool. He's the best.
He's the best.
Plus, his last name is Braun.
Yeah.
It's brawny.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's
There's other
great.
stories I want to get into with this scared stuff, but we should probably just.
Okay, scared. I got one more with the scared.
Okay.
Okay, and again, this is now non-construction. This is just my life. So I was really scared, and so this isn't so much I was scared in an instant. I was, but this scaredness stretched over the span of 10 days.
Oh my word.
Okay, I was scared for 10 days because of this. So putting my kids to bed, and I'm I like to do some of these stupid human tricks, little coin tricks, little pull your thumb off, little cool things, and I'm like, okay, so I'm like putting him to bed. I'm like, oh, show him a little trick, because what happened is I'm going across the kitchen, and on the kitchen we had a little bit of change there, and there's a loonie. And for you people that don't know what a loonie is, it's our dollar. It's a $1 coin. It's bigger than an American quarter.
You know what? Just keep going. I don't think the size.
Okay, you don't want to know about the size. Okay.
I think now that I've ridiculed you, I
Yep.
think it's an important part of the story now
Okay.
that I think about it.
Okay. So anyway, my
apologies.
this really nice loonie, and it's super shiny. It's brand new, came out that year. Looks like it just came out of the mint. So I have another loonie, and I won't grab it, and it's super, super dirty. It's like nasty, gross. I'm like, oh, I'll do those little stupid tricks, sleight of hand. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the kids' bedroom. I tell them a story. Hey, kids, you want to see this? See this nasty, dirty loonie? It's so gross. It's just so gross. Watch this. And I'm going to put it in my mouth, but I do a little quick sleight of hand. But already, previously, before going in there, I've put the shiny, nice loonie in my mouth. So I do the little sleight of hand with the kids, and I pretend I put the dirty one in there. And as I do it, I laid down on the bed with them, and I put this. Had the clean one in there, and as I laid down, it just slid to the back of my throat, and I swallowed it. Just like, whoa. And I sat up really quick, and I'm like, oh. And my kids are like, Dad, you okay? And I'm like, and I just left. I'm like, yep, I'm fine. And I'm in shock. I just swallowed a loonie, and I just felt it like it didn't get stuck. It just like down the gullet, and it's down. It's gone. And at this time too, I had burnt myself out on the house already, so I already had quite a bit of anxiety. Was working through that, and now I have swallowed a loonie. And so I go into the living room, and I'm said to my wife, I'm like, I swallowed a loonie. And she's like, what? I swallowed a loonie. I don't know. And so she's kind of laughing, but we're like, okay, not really sure. So anyway, I phoned my friend Brenton Bentham, naturopath doctor. I'm like, buddy, I swallowed a loonie. And he just laughs at me. First thing, he just laughs. I'm like, it'll probably be okay. Lots of kids come in. Kids do this all the time. And I'm like a 40-year-old adult. And I'm like, okay. He's like, but usually it's pennies or dimes, small things. I don't know about a loonie, but you're a big guy. It should work itself out in probably day and a half to maybe 3 days. You'll pass it, And
let me stop you for a second, because I remember this.
Yeah.
And you're having kind of your crash and being kind of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And this happening was it's this thing from the outside. I'm like, this is really funny and stupid, but this is heavy on you. And it was this weird thing to kind of give you support and mock you all at the same time. Yeah.
I know. So I'm trying to keep it almost jokey. That's a funny thing. But inside I'm like, okay. That battle that you have mentally, right? So I think it was 2 days or 3 days went by, and for you listeners that get a bit squeamish, this part you might want to just plug your ears, but I had to check my bowel movements. I had to by hand, because I needed to know. I didn't want to sit there and be like,
say by hand, what implements are you using? Please, not fingers.
my dukes,
No.
the forks. Seriously, I had to use my hands, but I did have surgical gloves, which I used most of the time. But because what I didn't want to have happen is me pass this thing and then not know, and then wonder.
Lose $1.
Yeah, lose $1. That's right. And then I'd have this thing in my stomach forever, and it's going to cause something cancerous mole hair growth to form, and I just die from the inside out. So I'm checking it every day, and I'm fairly regular, 1 to 2 a day. So a couple of times a day, I'm down on my knees, sifting through the toilet, and 3 days go by, no loonie. 4 days, no loonie. 5 days. You guys already know the end of the story because I said 10 days. But by day 5 or 6, I went to my family doctor. I'm like, dude, and he laughed at me as well. After day 5, he's like, oh, you swallowed it. It should come out, but he's like, I thought it would have by now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so he's just like, let's just leave it. And so the next thing I'm thinking, I'll go into the hospital. I'll have to have this whatever ultrasound thing, and they'll have to do surgery, cut me open, take out it's stuck in my bowel, take out my intestines, whatever. And so then, so as time goes on, I'm getting more and more anxious, right? Because it's not,
Mm-hmm.
and then day 10, having a little.
Was it legendary poop or just normal?
It was pretty normal, but as I'm going, all of a sudden there's a little tingle, like a little bit, and I was like, what? Could that have been right? So I was a little excited this time. I'm like, I've never been more excited to get down on the knees and go fishing. So I ended up going in there and feeling around, and sure enough, in one of the little things.
Yeah.
So I won't get into it anyway. So found it. And it's encased. That was the crazy thing. It was encased in like a rock. Like my body had, like, it wasn't like poo that was stuck around it. It was like, I don't know what it was, but it was like a rock, this solid thing. I couldn't even see the loony. And so I give it a little scratch, and there's a little gold there. And I'm like, oh, that's it. So I pulled it out, and then like I had to like scrub this thing to actually get the loony out, and then to make the story even sweeter. So I'm super excited.
Polished a turd.
Polished it. Yeah, polished it. Took it all out, scrubbed it all off, I boiled it like several times because I wanted to get it right back to clean. And so I boiled it, I scrubbed it, I put all kinds of like stuff to burn all the stuff off of it, and got it back to like this pristine, perfect thing that it originally was. And now every Christmas it hangs on my tree. I drilled a hole in it.
That's amazing.
And it's a Christmas ornament on my tree, and it's in perfect shape, and it says the date that it happens and everything because it was from that year.
Oh yeah.
There you go. I was really scared.
I can relate to that anxiety of swallowing things. I have sleep apnea.
Right.
And I would say twice a week at least, I wake up terrified out of my sleep because what's happening is I stop breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wake up and I'm like, I've swallowed it. I've swallowed something. And I'm sitting. Christy just hates it because suddenly I'm like looking around like, how do I get it out? Oh, go back to sleep. Twice a week.
That's awful.
And it's the adrenaline, the fear of like, I've swallowed something. And sometimes it's ridiculous. Like I swallowed a loony or my phone, something crazy in my dream. So why does your brain,
after all this, so are you dreaming about it?
It's, as far as I know, I've stopped breathing.
Sure.
And so in my sleep state,
yep,
sometimes a dream can attach to how my body's feeling. And then the adrenaline of not breathing wakes me up. And then I'm still, discombobulated. And I am in a panic. And then I have to sit on the edge of my bed and calm down. Like you didn't swallow anything. You're fine.
What is that statistic that the average person swallows 15 spiders?
No.
Something in their lifetime? Yeah. I have heard that in your sleep, the amount of spiders or bugs or whatever that actually.
And the average idiot, how many loonies do they swallow?
I don't know. One. I hope I don't do it again. I haven't put money in my mouth since, so I don't recommend it. But I know there's also people that choke on their tongue.
Yeah.
Right?
That's also part of my fear.
So weird.
And it's like I'm choking on my tongue.
And is it just that the tongue slides back, or is it the tip of it like folds backward and you swallow that part? Because I've heard of people that have said that like someone's been unconscious or whatever, their airways break, and they go in with their finger and they actually pull the tongue.
That's part of first aid training I took years and years ago. Well, that still is, but like you wipe their mouth, you put your finger in, make sure they're not choking on their tongue. That was like one of the first steps to like first aid if someone's unconscious or whatever. Really bizarre.
Weird.
Well, that's fun. Okay. How about we touch on, might have touched on this a bit already, but funniest injuries. I can do a quick one. And it wasn't that it was really that funny. It struck me funny. And I was completely by myself. And I was forming, there's actually pictures of it back on my Instagram. And I was forming up some columns for a house that we were building. And the way that I'd formed up, we use strip easy forms and strip easy ties. So there's just a 3/4 inch tall piece of steel that's 1/16 inch thick or so. And you can get them in all different lengths for different widths of walls. And I basically build 2 bulkheads, use 2 form panels, and use the ties to hold the whole thing together. And there's a whaler bar that slides through these holes in the ties. Anyway, all of that to say, in order to button the whole thing all up, you've got to take your nail puller and hook it on this little notch in the tie and pull that down to expose the hole to slide the whaler bar through. So I was doing one of the top ties, and I had my nail puller out, and I'm pulling on it. And if you've cut your bulkheads a little bit too wide, or there's like old concrete stuck in them, you got to really yard on those things to expose the hole to slide the bar through. So there's even times where you'll take the whaler bar and you'll grind the end down so it's a little tapered to slide it in, and you can bang on it with a hammer. So I'm putting these together, and I'm on the top one. The top one's being stubborn. So I've got my nail puller hooked on it, and I'm pulling on it with the little short end, all this leverage to try and get this bar through the hole. And I'm pulling. I'm like, I got to change my position here as I'm hanging on this thing. And so I'm pulling over here, and I come across to just change my angle. And right as I'm in line with my nail puller, it slips off the hook in the tie. And I've got my nail puller in my hand. It's 11/7/8 long, and the little L end is this end, and the sharp end is sticking out of my hand here, maybe only 3/4 of an inch. It's just out here, the sharp points. And so I'm pulling, and I come across, and it slips off, and it comes loose, and I just fully punch myself in the face with this thing.
Okay.
Snap my head back, and it was like a hard ring. I'm like, holy cow! I'm looking at the nail puller, and there's this sharp metal end out, and it hit me in the eyebrow, just above my eye. And truth be told, if it had hit my eye, I think the nail puller may have just touched my eyeball because of how much it was sticking on my hand. Like, I don't think it would have punctured my eyeball, but being that it hit my eyebrow and there's such a small amount of flesh there.
Yeah.
I just smoked myself right here. So I'm like, wham, look at my nail puller, and there's nobody else around. The rest of my crews are down below, and I'm just working these by myself. So I'm near my truck. I'm like, holy cow, that probably left a mark. And I've never had stitches. I've never sliced myself bad, never broken anything. I've been incredibly unscathed, never shot myself with a spiker. I'm not squeamish, doesn't bother me.
Except for the table saw incident.
No stitches though.
No stitches.
Fair enough.
Okay.
No stitches.
So then I'm like, that will have cut me open, I think. So I go to my truck and look in the rearview mirror, and I go over, and the other times when I do get, nicks and, minor cuts and stuff, I don't bleed, hardly at all. So I go over, I'm expecting blood should be flowing to my face. Nothing, but there's this 1-inch line, and I'm like, it's a talker, we used to call them. If you cut yourself bad enough, we call it a talker. You can fully open and close it. And I've got this gash through my eyebrow that's just it's super, super open. I'm like, and I'm laughing about it. I'm like, it didn't hurt at all. There's so little nerve ending there. And
it sounded like crying to me.
So I was just like, wow, I did that. That was really dumb. I know what can happen. That happens regularly. Your nail bar slips off. But this circumstance where I found myself in, when it happened, I'm like, yeah, should have seen that one coming. And I got to the hospital, I think 9 stitches through my brow to stitch that back together. So I got this cool little Vanilla Ice scar.
That's funny because I just saw a picture of Vanilla Ice
really
a couple days ago, and I was like, wow, cool scar.
Yeah. His 2 little shaved things in his eyebrow.
Between that and your bicycle mash face, it's shocking that your face is still as nice as it is.
Not as any more disfigured than it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a good one. It was a good ring on the skull, and then stitches, and back to work. It was fine. It was kind of a great injury because it didn't affect work at all. I got a cool scar out of it. Nothing serious. Story.
Did you go to the hospital right away?
Yeah. Yeah, I get stitched up. So they stitched me up, and I went back to work, and it was fine.
You haven't had any good ones? Like a funny
one? I can't think of necessarily any funny injuries. I mean, I haven't had much for stitches either. So.
No.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I was actually thinking too, as far as you guys being on site together, what was the first actual vehicle? Obviously you had Luke's truck. Was there ever a company vehicle that you guys had that you shared? Because I know you eventually started to get, I think some of that kind of stuff. There was a trailer or whatever like that, but I know there's been some.
That was after, basically. I think when you kind of wrapped up with us, we had got a tool trailer.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't had it for very long by the time that you left. And then I got a new truck, in the following year or two. Yeah, it was just the trailer. I remember the trailer. It was great. We got one with the ramp door in the back. And the one downside was that the height of the entry was like 5'9.5" or something.
Mm.
And there's a steel rail at the top of the door. And if you had your head down with a hat on, you'd catch that opening of the door on the head. Oh, it's that kind of hit to the head where you can taste your teeth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you hit your head hard enough where you're like smash your head and you feel it that kind of stack through like your vertebrae in your neck, and then you get like a taste in your mouth. It's like the taste of like bone dust or something. It's gross. It's so terrible.
Bone dust.
I've probably had that happen maybe three times over my framing career where you'd stand up and there's a brace over your head and you crack your head on it or it's terrible.
Why rub it? Like, why does it like put pressure on it and go and rub it? Like, is that kind of like to try to like dissipate the feeling right in that spot to like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Dissipate. That's a good word.
Yeah.
You know, the impact's right on this point. I'm trying to rub it to smooth it out.
Yeah. Dissipate it. Dissipatory touch. I think is the scientific word.
Okay. How about a comical customer interaction? You guys have any of those?
I've never had. So I am not a business owner. So as far as customer reaction, like, because you've had many customers. So I don't know as far as customer.
Because I mean, we talked about the one with that younger guy that we dealt with, who was a pain in the butt.
Yep.
You know, we've had some homeowners that have been awesome. I think of actually building for Hugh and Dennis, and how awesome they were to build for.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, bringing us coffees every coffee break and donuts were just incredible. So the one that comes to mind to me that we've talked about a little bit in the past was back when we first started our business together, Akribis Construction. We were doing flooring for Sears, and there was a particular instance on a job. So we were pranking each other all the time and having lots of fun at work. But there was a house that we did, and a lot of the jobs that we did were for seniors, retired people in like gated communities, and you know, they're retired and looking for things to do. You know, let's replace our floor. That was a pretty common job. So we come and tear up whatever they had and put down laminate and tile and hardwood and all the different kinds of things. And it was this nice old couple that we were putting flooring down for, and we were doing the whole main living area and the bathroom. The main bathroom connected to the main living area. So we had everything all torn up, toilets off, and they had said that, yeah, if you guys need to use the washroom, use the one in our ensuite, the ensuite bathroom. Okay, great. So we're doing our thing, and I got to use the washroom. Okay. So I'm like, oh, where are the old couple? Have they gone for a walk? Are they in the backyard? I'm not sure where they are. Okay. Well, the door's shut. So I like carefully slowly open the door, and it's dark. And here's the lady who's having a nap. I'm like, oh, sorry. So, no, it's okay. It's okay. Sorry. You in the washroom? Like, yeah. Oh no, you only come in. It's totally fine. So she said, yeah, come through just right here. Okay. Thanks. So sorry. So I tiptoe through the room in the dark. I'm like, okay, great. I'll try and get in the bathroom. So I throw the door open to run in there quick. And in the bathroom, on the toilet, with his pants at his ankles and a newspaper, is the guy. And these people were elderly. So he's got, glasses on, newspaper up. And I just remember like incredibly wrinkly knees. This guy. So I'm like, I'm so sorry. Close the door. And his eyes were like saucers. And then she sits up. I'm so sorry. I thought he was. I felt so stupid.
That's terrible.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't remember what happened after that. I just remember this, like the wrinkly knees, the newspaper, like this old
at least
guy.
That's all it was wrinkly knees. There wasn't any other. No other wrinkles you saw. I had kind of the opposite happen in Australia when my wife and I were there. She was going to university and I was just working and surfing. And they have these public bathrooms there, and they're those cool ones where you walk up and there's a sensor and the door opens for you. You go inside.
Oh.
The door closes for you. Light turns on, music comes on, and you can sit there and so I'm it's a very nice experience. So I had another bowel movement. And so I was going to take a little while. Right. And so I'd used these washrooms before. So I'm in there and it's so pleasant with this nice music. I'm like not in any hurry.
Yeah.
And it's all automated. So I'm just doing my thing. And it had been quite a bit of time, I suppose, because all of a sudden the light turns off, toilet flushes, and the door starts to open. And I'm there, and this old senior guy, because the light's off, he just backs on, starts to take like pants, or like he's grabbed his pants, starts, and so he didn't get them all the way down, but I'm like, oh, sorry. And I just put my hands on his ass and basically pushed him out of the door, pushed him back out. Like not his bare ass, but like he was going, and I had to like push him out, and all of a sudden the door closes, light comes on, music, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what just happened? So I quickly did the paperwork and just like, snuck out of there. And
That's amazing.
yeah. So don't take too long in those because you never know what'll happen.
So that leads us into, we got to talk about job site toilets. Because that is like every tradesperson has their stories and reality of dealing with, around here, they're usually blue plastic porta potties. And when I'm setting up a job, the first things I'm doing, talking to the GC is like, hey, where's our power and where's the toilet? And ideally get us a garbage bin as well. So those are like the first things on the job. And, we're always dealing with those stupid things, whether it's like kids vandalizing and kicking them over, or a windstorm that blows them down, or you jamming the door on your buddies and all that stuff.
Or it's the middle of winter and it's a crazy cold snap and you have to get naked basically in there to take a dump in minus. Like those are miserable.
Well, quite frankly, I'd prefer the minus 40 to the plus 40.
Oh yeah.
Where you're in there and you got the toilet mountain that is just about out and you got to hover over and the flies. And because like we used to prop our door open as long as it was angled towards the lake.
Yeah. For a nice view.
Nice view.
And ventilation.
Yeah. Ventilation. Because if it's closed, you're immediately covered in sweat.
That's true.
And it's filthy sweat.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah. It's miserable. So I'd take the minus 40.
You take the minus 40. Yeah.
For whatever reason, if you do have to go do your number 2 in there in the freezing cold, whenever you come out, your hands are warm.
What do you do with your hands in there?
I know. I knew that's where this was going to go. But I'm like, you go in there and you're like, I don't know if you just sit and what it is. I was like, my hands are warm. That was my experience.
Oh man, I didn't like. I just didn't like
terrible,
the cold.
Yeah, you go with a freezing rear end.
I remember one terrible. I mean, I have a lot of bathroom stories because I have bowel issues.
Mm-hmm.
So
many.
Yeah,
so many stories.
So we were framing in Edmonton, framing up an apartment, and I was framing interior walls or something on like the 3rd floor. And I remember there was only one toilet on the job site, and it was at the bottom of this ladder by the job shack. And I remember being all the way up on the 3rd floor, and I'm like, uh-oh, I feel it.
And when you feel it, it's like you need to go soon.
I need to.
It's always an emergency with you.
Yeah, yeah. So I look out the window down to where the porta potty is, and I see some loser go in, and he's in there. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, well, I'm just going to bank on getting to the bottom of the ladder and he's going to come out and it's going to be perfect timing. Mm-hmm. So I come down the ladder and he's still not out. I'm watching as I'm coming down the ladder and I'm like, I'm going to mess myself at the bottom of this ladder. If he's not out, what do I do? Mm-hmm. He's still not, I don't see the porta potty jostling at all. Like he's wiping, nothing. Totally. He's in there for a while and he's committed. So I have to decide immediately if I'm going to shit my pants at the bottom of the ladder, right by the job shack where all the people are, mm-hmm. or what. And all I can think of as I'm coming down the ladder is to jump in the basement window. And so I'm in the basement, thankfully still dirt floor basement.
Okay.
And it's immediate. I have to get the pants off. And I'm there doing the business in the basement right in front of the window on the other side because I wanted to get away from the sunlight into the dark.
Right.
So I took a couple steps in and I'm now in the dirt and there's another window on the other side with light coming in and guys are working right there. Their faces are right in the window working on the other side of the window and I'm squatting in the basement, miserable. And I managed to do my business, kick the dirt over it, zip up, figure a way to get out without drawing any attention, pretending like, oh, I'm just working down here.
Sure.
And made it out. I'm getting shit done.
Okay, you skipped over something that I'm really curious about. So you shit on the ground, you zip it up. Something Something's missing there.
Oh, see,
Do you
in my
do you
life,
wipe, like
in my
I'm pretty sure you wipe.
on a normal basis, yes.
Okay.
But in emergency situations, what do I got? I got 2-inch nails.
Yep.
3-inch nails.
Mhm.
What do I?
You got a sock. That's the
But
emergency.
it's I got time limit here. I
Okay.
don't want to pull a boot,
Right.
untie, sock,
Right.
wipe. Why are your boots off and a pile of shit on the floor?
Right. That gets really weird.
I want to cover it up
Yeah.
and get out.
Yeah.
And I think all I did, now I think you can respect it.
Yeah.
I got out, didn't draw any attention.
Sure.
By that time, the idiot in the
Right.
toilet was gone.
Okay.
I went in, cleaned up.
Okay. That makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was like in the 6-hour shift of, and then you went home later and had to peel off a beaver tail of.
Okay. The fact that you called it a beaver tail means to me you've had enough time to experience this and come up with a name. Horrible.
Oh, I know it's terrible.
Oh no.
Okay, so we got socks to the rescue at times, and then I think we probably a lot of us, if you spend enough time at job sites,
Mhm.
you get in there and there's no toilet paper.
Yep.
I know for sure. I've like torn the stupid cardboard tube off,
Mhm.
Oh,
and then you
yeah.
massage it to soften the stupid thing up and use that.
Absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. And then there were lots of times in the winter where somebody's in there. I mean, it was like almost guaranteed. If you go in the toilet and you're on a crew, someone that walks by while you're in there is going to slap the side of that thing
Mhm.
and just try and scare the living crap out of you. And you do it hard and like slap the side and you hear someone scream and yell. And I know one time someone did it. I don't know if it was me to somebody else or vice versa, where the soap dispenser came dislodged from the wall from it being hit. I think it was 2x4. And guy smacked it with a 2x4. And
Oh,
the soap
man.
dispenser came off the wall and hit the guy
Yeah.
that was sitting in there.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the vents are broken. So in the wintertime, you walk by with a snowball and buddy's in there and just like, I don't know what's going on in there. I'm just going to lob this through the window.
Oh yeah.
And then sure enough, you find out a second later, there's, yeah, that just landed in my open shorts in my underwear between my ankles. It's snow all in
so
their
good.
shorts.
Yeah, there's several
Oh.
different things that people use when there is no toilet paper. It makes me think of, remember the movie, I think it's called Demolition Man with
Oh, yeah.
Sylvester Stallone
Yeah.
and Sandra Bullock
Wesley Snipes.
and
You
Wesley
say it
Snipes.
Bullock.
Oh man, did I have ever hots for her. She was
was it.
amenable.
He
Anyway,
was it back in the day.
I remember Sylvester Stallone, he comes out of the bathroom and he's like, well, where there's supposed to be the toilet paper, you have these 3 seashells.
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, you don't know how to use the 3 seashells? And then she explains, she's like, back in the 90s, they used to use wadded up paper to do their business and all that kind of stuff.
And everyone laughs.
And everyone's laughs. But I know being, again, in the ocean and in the water bunch, there's I would be shocked if there isn't many a surfer or ocean dwelling human that hasn't just gone in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And just let it go. I mean, and the other one too is I remember Justin and Nathan, another big one that they found out was when there was no toilet paper, if there was a stream by the place we were surfing, like a little just go and then you just sit in the stream and the river rock, like smooth, nice little
Amazing.
river rock, which is quite amazing. And I could
Yeah.
see that maybe being close to the seashell thing that they talk about in the movie, maybe.
Our apologies for the content, but this is like, we grew up in the backwoods and
Mhm.
making
Well,
do and job sites, and this is what you
This
deal
is
with.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I've told you fellas this before, and you probably remember it clearly because I think it made a big impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
Is my most precious, impactful toilet experience
Mhm.
was in the Bowen Lakes. So that's in northern BC, very remote. You have a series of lakes that you canoe and portage through that I did with my brothers and my dad, brother-in-law. And we were at one spot camping, had just, brought our canoes ashore and just set up the tents and stuff. And you don't know what's around there. Typically, it's just a nasty outhouse. But there was a little sign, toilet with an arrow going up a trail. And I go up this trail, and it was a little bit longer than I expected. And it comes up to a clearing and a view of the lake, down the lake.
Mm.
mountains. And the toilet was literally a throne, one of those green Parks Canada plastic toilet, outdoor, no roof, steps leading up. So imagine
no walls around it at all.
No walls, a semicircle stepped staircase, right? Up to the throne with a semicircle back. So you sit with your hands out like this.
Armrests.
Yep. And we had packed some little, what are they called? Cigarellos, cigars, you know, because the toilet's nasty and you'd smoke one of those because it would get rid of the flies and the smell.
Sure.
And so I had one of those sitting there, no one else around, just the most pristine view, and a little mouse ran around just in front of me. And I just was like, I'm ruling the domain.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
That's fantastic.
It was a great experience, which I think people can appreciate.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And some more fun around job site stuff and that, some of the best pranks. What are some of those? I know I can tell two quickly here. One being with Chad on a job we were pouring a foundation. I keep thinking it was the same place where you really broke your leg, but it must not have been because that was before he was with us.
Yeah.
But in my mind, that's where it is for some reason. And we were pouring a low foundation, must have been 3 or 4 foot high walls, bracing all over the place. So I'm walking the top of the walls with the hose from the pump truck, and Chad was going along the forms with me. And so one set of the forms are set with a ledger. They're nailed in. The buttoned up side is loose. So as you're pouring, you're going along and you're banging on the bottom to make sure the forms all snap out tight to the whaler bar. So he's doing that. He's walking along and he's just banging the bottom of the forms, make sure it all snaps out. And he's having to duck under all the braces along the side. And he's a bigger fella. And as he bends over, he gets the plumber's crack.
Oh, yeah.
Exposed. I'm just like, and he was fairly new, only been with us for a few months. And we pranked and messed around with each other a fair bit. And so one of the time I couldn't help myself, he ducks under, the shirt comes up, pants come down. I've got the hose and I just did a quick little one of those. Well, if you've ever worked with a pump truck before, there's a huge volume of concrete coming out of that sucker. And that little swing of the hose must have put 4 liters worth of concrete down his pants, straight into his shorts. So we laugh ourselves silly. It's super funny. He's out there trying to dump his pants out. Well, the downside was within 20 minutes, I mean, concrete has lime in it and it can burn your skin. So he's like, I gotta leave. This is burning. Like I got major trouble here. So then we end up being down a guy to finish off, and he has to go home and shower and clean himself
Poor
up.
guy.
So that was it was super funny and kind of backfired a little bit. But yeah, that was pretty funny. Another one that was just kind of a funny situation. This is back when I was working for somebody else, and we were doing I was installing kitchen cabinets with a guy. And so I then was maybe I must have been 17 or 18, and with my parents' friend Daryl, and we were installing cabinets. And he was a bit of a jokester too, but I learned was a guy who could dish it out but not take it so well. I learned that kind of the hard way. And so at the time, I had a lunch kit, a fabric lunch kit, and it had this plastic zip-in lighter to make it waterproof. It was this little insulated lunch kit. Bring my lunch for there in that. Well, he figures it'll be funny to nail it to the floor. So it's all waterproof and sealed and everything. And so when I'm not around, he opens it up and takes a staple gun and riddles it to the floor, punctures the membrane and everything. I go to pick it up and you kind of wrecked my lunch kit.
You ruined it.
He's laughing away. It's so funny. I got you. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny, but you wrecked my stuff. Well, okay. He's twice my age and I want to respect him. He's my boss, but he's being kind of playful, which I kind of appreciate. That's kind of the tradesman's love language. So then he's elsewhere and his lunch kit's there. He's got one of those classic igloo plastic lunch kits, with the handle that locks the lid. And I think it was white lid and handle and a red base on it. And we had silicone, for dapping from filler boards to walls and different things. So I'm like, I'm not gonna wreck his thing. I'm just gonna put some silicone on the other side of the handle, white
I
silicone.
thought you were going to say I just nailed that thing right to the floor. It was awesome.
So I legitimately went through the thought process. I'm not going to wreck his, but I'll play the game. I'll get him back. So I put a bead of white silicone on the underside of the handle. And I'm like, this isn't going to do any damage. It'll be kind of funny, make a little bit of a mess. Great. Super simple, safe, little like, I'll play your game and get back at you. He comes into the room at lunchtime, picks his lunch kit up, feels something. His face kind of goes, and he puts it in his other hand to look at his hand. So he wipes it, and he's like, what are you doing? And he like totally gets after me and is so mad. And I was like, you like actually ruined and destroyed my lunch kit, and you can't handle a little bit of silicone on your hands. And he was like, no, this is stupid. How dare you? And it was all puffy and pissy the rest of the day. Like, whatever. So that was like one of those moments for me as later on an employer. I'm like, if I'm going to be that guy, I'm going to happily take it. And there's the odd time when one of my staff has like pranked me or done something and it was bad timing. Maybe they didn't know that I just had a rotten discussion with another employee or a trade or
let's be honest, it's usually me. Usually because I'm the one that'll often prank you, but it's part of that is you have to also, try to read the situation. Because there's been times where I'm like, seriously, you're upset about that? And other times I'm like, oh, that was not a good thing to do right then.
And as an employer too, like I try to roll with it. I'm like, I'm going to dish it out. I'm going to take it. It's going to be fun and games and great. But then there's the odd time where someone does something too far, or they just like Chad got me once. We were working at development in the wintertime, and I was walking down the street to another one of our jobs down the road, and he makes a snowball. And this is again fairly early on in our working relationship. And he's like, I'm just going to fire this Luke's direction. So he makes a snowball, and he's a ball player. He's got a good arm on him. And he just wings this thing down the road, this big lob. I'm a long ways away. Well, he cracks me right square in the back of the head. Whack! And I knew right away that like, that was totally Chad. And I'm like, I'm going to give him nothing. I'm going to make him sweat it out. I'm just going to take it, and I'm not going to look back. I'm just going to keep right on walking. so I went and did my thing. I came back. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he just felt so terrible. I was like, I totally got you, sucker. So it was fantastic, but he felt so bad. It was great.
I've always had a hard time with pranks. Right? Like there's us like hitting each other and stuff, but I hate them. And when I worked at camp, we worked at this one camp in the shoe shop, and there was another camp a short distance away that we had a great friendship with, and our staff would go do stuff with their staff. And so we go, and they had this wicked setup where there was a lake and 2 little islands. And we played the most epic game of capture the flag with them, where you had to like canoe and swim through the water from island to island. It was just incredible. And then we get back from the game, and they got this huge spread of barbecue and stuff, and it was amazing. And I remember coming back, and our team was like, hey, let's sneak back tonight and go steal all their kayaks and canoes and hide them around the camp. And I'm like, guys, that's a terrible idea. They just treated us like gold. We had an amazing time. Don't do it. And they're like, this could be awesome. And so they go and they do it, and they hide their canoes and kayaks in the trees around camp. So they get up, their team gets up the next day, to do program, and all their boats are everywhere. I don't know if they've had another camp barbecue since then.
Oh,
you ruined it.
Just ruined it.
Terrible.
And so when we worked at camp on Pender, we had a rule that you're not allowed to do pranks because it gets out of hand quick. And we had some staff that just wanted to prank because it's funny, it's fun, and it was happening. And before I could get to it, somebody pooped in a bag and hung it on somebody's chair. And, it just gets totally. So I've had this like anti-prank policy. Every time I've kind of overseen any sort of like team or community, because certain personalities can take it and dish it out and it's great. And certain personalities are like, no, this is terrible.
So it reminds me of when you were at Bible college and you and another cabin, your cabin, another cabin, were back and forth. And the one that was like so genius that you guys pulled that just devastated their night
Oh yeah.
that got tense in the morning. You gotta lay that out a little bit because that was
Yeah.
genius.
Yeah, we had it was our room, and I want to say there was 4 of us to a room. And so when the other guys were out, their room was out. We went and we borrowed a bunch of alarm clocks. So this is before, iPhones and all that stuff, right? So everybody had like your own little alarm clock to wake up. So we borrowed some from other guys and from the girls' dorms and whatever. And so we had a bunch. We went to their room and we stashed these little alarm clocks in their rooms in places. Like we taped them underneath a bed, or we put them inside someone's little night case, and we put them all, and then we set them to go off every half hour of the night.
Worst. You are the worst.
And so the first one went off at midnight. And so the cool thing is we could actually see from our window, it went straight across this little area, and we could see there. So we're like, hey, I'm not staying up all night watching, but for the first one, I'm going to see. So lights are all out. We're waiting. We're watching on our clock. Midnight happens. And we can't hear anything from there, but all of a sudden we're just waiting. Nothing's happening. And all of a sudden a light turns on over there. We're like, okay, it's working. And you can hear it. And, what the hell? I'm going to put on the thing. And so we ended up going to bed. We're like, okay, this is going to be great. Because they had pranked us a bunch too, and they were, we thought this isn't going to wreck anything. It's not going to make a mess. Nothing like that. So we get up and we go the next morning, and we go and everybody eats breakfast in the hall. And so we get up nice and early, and we're all chipper. We had great sleep, and we're eating our breakfast, waiting for these guys to come in. And they come in, and again, there's 4 of them. 3 of them come in, and they're just looking at us, and they've got like this little grin, and they're like, "You guys are so." And 3 of them, fantastic, took it really, really well. Like that was the best prank. We were up so mad all night long, looking up all over the place, tearing the place apart, finding these stupid things. That was brilliant. But man, they're just pissed. And then one guy came in, and he was a bit of an older guy. I think, and I was like 19 or 20 at the time, and this guy was probably maybe in his mid 30s. And sleep for him is like key. Like he needs his sleep, otherwise he does not function. He had he had really bad eczema. And so he came in the morning, and because he had this bad sleep, he looked like the devil. He came in and his eyes are all bloodshot. His skin is like peeling off his face, and he's just twitching. And he comes in there and he comes straight to me and he tells me to stand up. And so like I stand up, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I know he's not going to hit me or anything like that, but, and he's like, and he gets right in my face and he's pointing at me. He's like, and he was this English guy, "You've got no right to take away my sleep." And he just like right in my face, and I'm like, and I'm like, "Well, dude," and I tried to, and he just turned around and just walked away, and he was so pissed. And I think maybe later on that day he came back and he's like, okay, it was, he calmed down a bit, but like he was not happy. Not happy, Bob. It was brutal, but it was good. But I think one of the best ones we did, and I'll say it really quick, we actually did a room swap. We actually took 2 different rooms and we swapped everything in the room. So we went to the posters they had up, the cards, all their stuff, their clothes, their towels, and we put it into another room exactly the way it was. So we swapped 2 rooms completely. These 2 guys, so 8 people, 4 in each one, they came back, they walk into their room, and again, we're watching. And then the first guy walks into his room and he's like, "Oh, it's the wrong room," because it's all set up perfectly. And he walks in there again. He's like, "No, this is my room." He walks in, and it's like, "No, it's not my room. Like, this is not my room at all." And and these 3 guys are like, they're like, "Are we?" I swear. And so then they go to the other side, they look, and it's their room. Like it's identically set up exactly the way. Now, what they should have done is just kept it that way. We changed everything perfectly. So that's your room now. Maybe you have to change your sheets or something like that. But instead, they're like, "Well, this is stupid." And they took everything and they threw all of the stuff out of the room, made this huge pile on the lawn, and just created this huge mess. And we ended up getting crap for it. But again, I think they just should have just stayed in there and had the separate rooms, and it would have been totally fine.
Okay, what about vehicles? Like we talked a little bit, you were asking about job site vehicles and company vehicles.
Like closest calls kind of thing.
Yeah, like on the job site, there's always issues with like, especially bigger crews, like where you park.
Mm-hmm.
Do you carpool? Are guys heading off for lunch? Is there a good place to park? I know when I was working at Edmonton, I was driving the old little red Toyota Tercel, and we were building wood frame apartments, 4 or 5 story apartments. and these big open clearings, and we were parking in a field, and it was kind of soft, mushy, muddy, grassy crap that we would park in, and it had some rain or snow had recently melted, and the ground was pretty messy. And this was one of my most proud moments to prank another guy that we kind of had it in for each other and getting after each other at times. And we're end of the day, 10-hour days of framing, you're tired, and we're parked side by side. We both got our little crappy cars, and it was a little standard 4-speed Toyota Tercel standard. And so I look over, the guy's name was Jarvis. I'm like, see you later, Jarvis. And he's sitting a little bit farther away than you are from me. Both our other windows are down.
Yep.
And I just have this epiphany. I'm like, if I turn my wheels this way and pop the clutch and I do a quick reverse, I will swing my front end towards him with a front wheel drive, and maybe it'll pick up some filth from the ground and throw it in his open window.
Mm-hmm.
It worked way better than I could have ever hoped. So I just, and I swing the front end, and he's sitting there. I just see him go like this because there's just mud and grass and crap. This flows through his window, all over his dash, the inside of the windshield, on his face.
Oh, that's
you're the
It
worst.
was terrible. It worked a little too good. And he would just like he was impressed,
Yeah.
and so disgusted. It was fantastic. So that was one of my, again, kind of a prank vehicle thing.
That Tercel is, I'm not sure if I inherited that one because I remember
Yours is a different one. You got your own. It
I
was
had
like
my
the
own.
same one.
Yeah,
but it was a different one.
pretty much, because I remember parking behind your truck. I came over to visit you and Tiana in your place, and we were chatting, and then you got a call and you had to take off really quick.
Yeah, it was a work call. It was bad news.
Yeah.
I was like, it was on a weekend, and I'm like, this sucks. I got to run to the job site. Do you want me to?
Yeah, because all I remember is like you left really quick, and I was in the house still just talking with Tiana, your wife, and then
I came back.
Yeah, and he came back like I don't know, a minute and a half later. I'm like, oh, that was quick. And you came back, and your face is just like you were pissed, but you knew that it was your fault. But you were kind of pissed at me for parking behind you, but you weren't. I could just
It's
see
just
there
a
was so much
crappy
emotion. It was just a
situation,
crappy situation. He comes in, he's like, I just backed into your car. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I'm thinking, oh, I feel bad for you, but I'm like, oh, you backed into my car. Like, what's going on here? And
yeah, so I had to run out, and I had my Ford Ranger at the time with a bunch of lift on it and there's like a drop hitch in the back, and you had your tiny little Toyota Tercel parked right behind me. And I came charging down there, jumped in my truck, checked the mirrors, couldn't see a thing.
Yeah.
Like, crunch. And just the hitch on the truck, like through the grill, into the hood, hit the like just like crunched the front end of your car.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's perfect right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you went to the pick and pull though. And like,
well, that was a crap. It was in worse shape than mine.
Yeah.
And I went to the pick and pull on the weekend, and I got a new hood and new parts and new grill. And I spent an afternoon with some pry bars bending stuff inside, and it was way nicer.
It was way better. Like,
before I'd done
blessing
it.
in disguise. Thank you very much.
So that the funny thing is with my Tundra,
Mhm.
on the job site, Chad had parked right behind my Tundra, and I had to lift and drop hitch on that. And the guys would use my truck to run and grab material and tools at times from the job shack. And Lance went to jump in my truck to go grab something and did exactly the same thing to Chad's car.
Right.
He
The
backed
red
up.
Sunfire
It was
or something?
the Saturn. What was it now? It was a Saturn. I don't remember what model.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, same thing. Big crunch right up the hood. And it was a crappy car that Chad didn't care about. But Lance, gets in my truck, and hear the metal.
And they never
on
did
metal.
fix it because I remember
No,
that's
it had
how I
this-
recognized that car all the time. I'm like, oh, there's another one of those. Oh, it's Chad.
It had this big gouge up the hood for like a foot and a half.
Oh, it's like
Through
a
the red
speed
paint.
V
Oh, yeah.
in the hood.
Yeah, absolutely.
That crunch the front. Yeah, so those are a couple of the vehicle ones.
I remember a close call one coming back from the job site. You and I had my motorbike. I was on my, it's an old 1982 Honda Nighthawk. And you were in your truck, and we were coming up. It was right by the Tim Hortons, just before you go over the bridge. There's that light there, right?
Mhm.
And so we're going there, and I thought maybe both of us were going to burn through a yellow light, but it was yellow, and I
Pink.
should have absolutely
It's
stopped.
pink.
Pink. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was right there. And I should have stopped, but cars are waiting. They've come out a little bit. If they're waiting for ours to go, so we slow down and then they can quickly zip. That one car will slip through. And I just like gun it stupidly. And this car came and we didn't touch, but we were like, that would have been possibly the end of me. Like that, if I would have, do you remember that? And I remember, cause I thought you were being like, you idiot. And I was like, yeah, that was really, really stupid. So close. And that also reminded me of Dad when he was, I think, driving with Jerry Boschman or something like that at nighttime.
Oh yeah. That was
on the motorbike.
That was bizarre.
And I can't exactly
It wasn't
remember
their fault. They were in their lane, banked into a corner, and a guy coming the other way cut the inside of the corner. And I think cut on the inside of the oncoming lane.
Yeah.
And they were banked over and it knocked the rearview mirror off the bike and the car brushed their legs.
Yeah. But did not, because again, when you're on a motorbike and you're banked in there, you can't just straighten out. Otherwise
Line
you
is
go right
set.
off the,
Yeah.
right? So they couldn't really do anything, but it took the mirror off and the car wiped their leg and they unscathed. But I think they pulled over after and just basically got on their knees because they were,
Yeah.
like that.
I think they
been the
turned
end.
around and went to try to find the guy, but he was long gone.
Yeah.
They couldn't get him. Okay, here's one more. So the same guy that I was installing kitchen cabinets with. This was the craziest vehicle situation I've ever watched in person. Oh my goodness. This is super scary. Okay, so we were driving, I think, at Kamloops to install kitchen cabinets. Got super early in the morning, and Daryl was a bit of a angry driver. He's always in a hurry and critical of other people, how they're driving.
Mm-hmm.
So we're tearing along in his truck, tools in the back, leaving super early to get an early start. And it's like a 2-hour drive. And there's a car in front of us that's like going slow, under the speed limit. And Daryl's just like right on his ass. He's just like in his mirror. You know, guys do that. You'll drive right up close, just fill the rearview mirror. And he's just like, come on. And we know there's a 2-lane area coming up where he's going to be able to get by. So he's just like right on this guy and all impatient. I'm just sitting in the passenger seat like, ugh, this guy's pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And so he lets a little bit of space develop right before the 2-lane so that he can get some speed and just blow by this guy, just to lay on the throttle and tear on by. So he lets a little space go. So this guy's, the 2 lanes are coming and Daryl just comes charging up behind him because this guy should take the right lane and let us go by. And he just stays in the left side, which just pisses Daryl off. So Daryl's like, "Rrr." All of a sudden he has to swerve to the right into the right-hand lane to go by to not rear end this guy. What Daryl isn't aware of, there's a Camaro coming flying up behind us that he is unaware of, who is going to take the right-hand lane because he sees both of us on the left. So this guy is going to blow by us on the right, and Daryl swerves right to go around this guy and completely cuts off this Camaro. So I get to watch this thing. So we like push this guy into the shoulder and the road goes up and turns. And then there's a concrete barricade that starts. So I look, it's like in slow motion, something out of Fast and the Furious or something, where Daryl is like wide-eyed. He's kind of between these 2 cars. And this Camaro has like swerved onto the shoulder and his crank back left again. So he's drifting. His ass end is on the shoulder. His front end is on the asphalt. And he's just shooting gravel over the bank. And he's sliding sideways towards this concrete barrier.
It's like that Ken Blocks thing when he's coming around the corner.
Yeah. And I'm just like, in my mind, it's all in slow motion. I'm watching and imagining the side of this Camaro is going to hit this concrete barricade. It's going to launch sideways and tumble and disappear into the trees over the bank.
Yeah.
So he's drifting sideways. Everything is just like, ah. He just hooks up enough traction to just scoot just in front and then and took off up the road.
In front of you guys.
In front. He gets around us in this small area and then took off. And then Daryl was just like, and half mad, half terrified, half guilty. And I'm sitting there as this like 18-year-old kid, like, holy crap.
That's
insane.
brutal.
Yeah. Super terrifying.
What is the, now, because I was gonna attack the Alberta drivers, but at the same time, I also lived in Alberta. You lived in Alberta. You're like from Alberta? Is that correct? Or you've been there a lot. I know Mark, he's an Albertan off camera and he still has his Alberta plates on, even though he's posing here as but so again, like if I'm in Alberta and I've got my Alberta plates on and I see a BC driver, I'm like, oh, stupid, whatever. But if I'm in BC and then some Albertan rips in front of me, I'm like, Albertan's freaking whatever. What's the deal there? And what do we blame each other for?
See, I don't know that
it's a real thing.
Is there stigma to BC drivers in Alberta, I don't feel
No.
like that's a thing. It's just when
don't know,
Albertans
Mark?
drive here.
If you no, okay,
No.
So as far as I understand it here, so Albertans oftentimes they're used to straight roads.
sure.
So the windy mountain roads, they're like, whoa, crazy mountain roads, super windy and unfamiliar with like, you can't like totally space out. You actually have to pay attention because there's corners. And then they're also very familiar with driving in winter conditions, which is fine and good. But then you come here with all the elevation and like from your house to my house, you can be mowing your lawn. I can have a foot and a half of snow and we live 10 minutes away from each other.
It's true.
So depending on the elevation you're at, you're like, oh, I can drive in the snow. Done it my whole life. And like you get the greasy, grimy, slippery, nasty snow. And then 5 minutes higher in elevation, it's dry, dusty powder with some grip.
Right.
So they drive the way they would drive in Alberta in snow because it's all the same elevation everywhere. And it's completely unpredictable. So to me, it's a combination of we have really windy roads that they're unfamiliar with oftentimes, and the snow is completely unpredictable.
Right.
So
And plus, they also, I would say, are more typically drive the big trucks, diesel, gas. You know, I mean, again, and I mean, obviously, I'm a supporter. Edmonton Oilers. I love
our families from there.
You know, so I get it. So it's not but at the same time, it's often like you'll be driving on the side, and it's just like some loud diesel, and it'll like cut you.
The oil patch guys, oftentimes,
and you know, and they're Alberta.
Well, I've lived close to the equivalent in Alberta and BC.
Sure.
In Alberta, you can get your license at 14.
Right.
And you have
2 years before you can in BC.
Yep. And you've got a lot of, like you're saying, straight stretch and a lot of high speed. Like if you're not going 120, you're not going.
Yep.
So a lot of high speed stuff, and you get sudden weather changes. Like the stretch of road between Calgary and Edmonton is a nightmare. So the high speed, the straight stretch, and the sense of like, I got to get there, I'm in a hurry, because you drive between Lethbridge and Calgary or Lethbridge and Alberta. When we worked in high level, that guy that we'd go to the restaurant every day, he would brag about his BMW. He'd get from Grand Prairie to Edmonton. Yeah, he'd go like 300. He'd just crank that BMW because you got long stretches of straight and 2-lane.
Yeah, load almost no traffic.
And he just
fly
as fast as his BMW would go.
Sheesh.
So you've got kind of in my uneducated opinion of having lived in both, you kind of have a culture of like high speed, get there quick. And you are used to sudden weather changes and stuff. But then you get into BC, you got so much stupid road construction. You've got the elevation change. You got the mountains. You've got windy roads. You got single lane. It's annoying.
Sure.
So my little assumption would be that you get someone who's used to Alberta driving in BC and it would just piss them off.
Yeah.
And especially because you've got holiday trailers, you've got skidoo trailers. Any time of year, you got tourism going on and people lollygagging on the highway.
Yeah.
See, I also grew up with my dad telling me we'd be driving along and he's like, man, I'm so glad they implemented that new way to see the bad drivers. Their plates are red and blue. It's so nice that they do that.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with this kind of culture of like Alberta drivers are terrible drivers.
Okay.
Which is irrelevant, but at the same time, we're postulating on why that might be. But then the stereotype is absolutely there.
Yeah. I have to be, I'm almost more distracted by the word postulating and lollygagging. Those are fantastic descriptive words. Those are great. My only other quick car story was, I would say, when Luke talked about the guy crashing down the bank into the trees. On Thetis Island, I got my license. I think I'd just gotten my like N where you could drive by yourself. I come back from work, and there's this one corner on Thetis Island that they called the money corner. For some reason, money was there. But part of the reason why money was there is because multiple cars crashed at this place.
You'd find change.
You'd find change there from cars that had crashed there multiple times.
This is terrible.
Yes. But not like death. Like it wasn't a corner that you could,
it
wasn't a corner you could go that fast. It was so sharp. Like it was probably a like 25 kilometer.
Yeah, you could roll though, because if it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's not like a huge bank, but a small bank that went down there. And so I'm cruising after work, and I've got the radio on, brand new driver, but I'm in my parents' red Subaru.
Free Fallen's playing.
Yeah, Free Fallen's probably playing. And there was a lot of deer on the island, and I'm just cruising down there, and this deer comes walking out, and I like brake right there, try to miss it, get to the edge, and fall off the edge and roll the car like it was like one roll, and then boom, hit a tree, smash it. So I've smashed the car, stupid deer, and I'm freaking out. I get up on okay, here's the truth. There was no deer. I totally made that part up. But did I tell my parents there was no deer?
No.
So now I'm up there. I'm in shock and I'm freaking out. But I'm like, oh my God, I crashed the car. And then a guy came around the corner a little bit later. A friend of mine, was Carl Jenkins, actually.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, hey, Carl, I crashed the car. He's like, dude, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I hit a deer. And I've said this out loud. I've hit a deer. And this put me on the trajectory of years of heartache, guilt, shame, and all other things horrible. So again, I get home. He drives me home. The car's still in the ditch. And I get home and I'm like, Dad, and I'm like emotional. I'm like crying. I'm like, Dad, I crashed the car and I hit a deer. And I say it again. And now I've like put in there and as I'm saying, I'm like, this is awful. And he's like, okay, no, it's okay. And he like calmed me down, and I'm like, crying and stuff like that. So we end up, getting in like the village tractor to come down there and like pull the thing up. And so this all turns into thing. And I remember we get the car pulled out. And so for insurance purposes, we're like, well, let's see if you hit this deer, and if there's any hair or if there's anything that we can prove that you hit it, it'll be way better for the insurance, because I'm on my parents' insurance. Well, is there any hair? No, there's no hair. Crazy thing though, a little bit of an alibi for me as well, is the lady I worked for, Miss Finley. She told my parents that just earlier that same day, she had seen a deer on that corner. So it was just perfect. Like there was deer on that corner that day. So it's perfect. And so we don't find it. So then my parents' insurance go up, whatever. And I'm just like eating this lie and having now to tell it over and over and over for days after this, right? So this goes on for years. I'm not even joking. Because now every single time you're at a function and people are telling the car crash stories, I don't bring it up. But then Luke will be like, hey, Brad, tell him the time you hit a deer and you rolled the... And I'm like, okay. So I'll tell the lie over and over every Christmas, my dad, parents. So this happens so anyway, my dad turns 50 years old years later. This is like 20 years later. I've been lying 20 years. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I had told people after this now that it was a lie, but I hadn't told my dad yet. And I told Luke about this whole thing, years later, it was a lie, and I just been it's eating me up. And so we're taking my dad out for his 50th birthday, and down in Summerland here at the Perch, at the time you could take someone there for birthday, and you would get, however old you were, you got that many free wings. So we take my dad out for 50 free wings. And so we're out and we're chewing it. And Dad, I got to tell you something on your 50th birthday here. I've been wanting to tell you this for Edge. And he's like all curious. I'm like, yeah, so the whole, how I crashed the car and I hit the deer and everything. He's like, yeah. I'm like, there was no deer. I lied. And I've been lying about it for 20 years. And I feel horrible and I'm really, really sorry. And he just looks at me and he's kind of like, he kind of has this bit of the smile, and he's like, he's just taking it in. He's like, okay. He just kind of like let it go. And he's like, that's okay. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. and
we just 16 all over again.
I was exactly right. And I remember Luke and I were just there. And so it was this beautiful moment to be able to tell him and for him to like forgive me. And I mean, even if I told him that I had just rolled it, they would have understood. I mean, obviously I probably would have had to pay for something and there would have been some repercussion, but I mean, anyway. And so since then, that's actually been a huge lesson for me. Like I used to lie actually quite a bit. And I'd say I don't lie. I still probably, white lies here and there, but that seriously did a number on me because I had to carry it for so long. Yeah. There's a good little story.
What are some memories of like those euphoric, peaceful, serene moments on a job site? Do you guys have any of those? Is there any times where you're like, that was just really great. That went together perfect. There was a good environment. Like, is there any of those that come to mind to you guys that were highlights? Because I know like there's times where it's a hard job.
Mhm.
It's hard work. It's manual labor. You hurt yourself. You're sore most of the time. But in the midst of that, there's some like really sweet high moments where you're like, whether it was like the efficiency of the crew is just clicking, you're having a good time getting a ton done. Like for me, there's probably been 3 or 4 times over my 25 years framing. I think it was always on a roof by myself, where it's like you're framing or sheeting and you're like, the weather's perfect. It's a clear sky, you're getting stuff done, and you're just like, this is really great. There's just so much to be thankful for. Those moments you can kind of take stock of your surroundings and just acknowledge that you have so much to be grateful for.
Mhm.
And getting a little bit teary and just being like, I don't know what's going on. It's what's in the water or whatever. But I'm just like, this is special.
Mhm.
And that sounds like overly sentimental and emotional, but I would be surprised if people have been in the trades for long enough haven't had a few moments like that,
Mhm.
where you're just like, this is work worth
Mhm.
doing, and I'm proud of how I'm doing it, and this is special. Like one of those for me was the day that was actually on my birthday when Chad, my lead hand, we talked about wrapping up the company and shutting it down, and that was the day I went up on the roof to do my last
Mhm.
roof with Akribis Construction and frame and sheet, and it was this perfect morning. Sun was coming up on the lake, and I've got a post on my Instagram way back then. But I posted that, just like, so much to be thankful for.
Mhm.
It's this beautiful moment
Mhm.
and this conclusion of this chapter of my career. Yeah, that's always the case for me. It's up in the trusses, and it just kind of hits me. And you're thinking family and kids and employees, and just a good moment.
Mhm.
You guys?
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily have one specific, but usually the moments were a combination of like, I don't know why, but it's got to be in the fall because it's nice and cool and the sun's out. And so you shed a couple layers and you're taking that nice deep breath. You look around and you see that you're accomplishing a lot, and you hear your friends laughing and they're joking, and
Mhm.
kind of there's an air of like we're producing and we're enjoying, and then someone brings coffee
Mhm.
and you're like, this is the greatest gift you've ever given.
Mhm.
That surprise coffee and donuts.
Yeah.
And you like, let's just stop right now. And you're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And you're able to just enjoy. It's like it's a moment of being present and enjoying each other and enjoying what your hands are producing. That's usually what's going on.
Sure.
And I think we had that a number of times to be
Mhm.
able to enjoy that.
Mhm.
Or on the flip side, going through something miserable, whether it's weather or a really crappy job that's been really particularly tough, and you come through the other side and you're able to look back and be like, oh man, we did it. And so we can move on.
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
Yeah, mine, I would say probably my feeling every day. I just, no, I'm just kidding. I would honestly, though, mine's similar to yours in that not so much specific, but I have little flashes and pictures in my head of, like you said, sitting around with some of your best friends who are now family that you're brothers and sisters with. Um, and because we have grown up and we have been able to build in this beautiful place, there is so many. I mean, there's actually, I'd say, almost few places that I worked at where I'm like, this is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful place. And so I think I remember many of those sitting by the lake and just having this beautiful lake or a sunset or the birds flying over, and we're just sitting there, buddies, eating your sandwich, and the simplicity and the community that's in that. I don't know. I think there has been many for sure. Yeah.
This is different, but
Mhm.
this is what came to mind. When I was on Pender, so Southern Gulf Islands, small 24 square kilometer island. You've got the Cascade Mountains going around you in the distance. So you're looking out over basically ocean and other islands and mountains in the background. And I remember it was a particularly difficult day. My sister had cancer and camp was really rough, and I went for this long walk. And there was this amazing spot that I loved to go to. I'd sneak onto, somebody's private property, but there was nothing there. It was just like empty lots and stuff.
Mhm.
And so there was a trail. I had found some old trail, and it took me to this bluff. Not really a bluff. It's like a 300-foot cliff.
Mm.
And it could look out over Main Island and the like Mount Baker in the background and the San Juan Islands and stuff. And I remember sitting there at the top, and there was like this old gnarled arbutus tree that hung
Mm.
out. And I'm just sitting there, it's just in the quiet, just enjoying that view. And it was like this most surreal moment ever. This eagle comes in and is flying like just like honestly at my feet because it's such a high cliff.
Mhm.
And it just is flying below me. And I'm like, wow, look at that eagle. Wow. And then another one flies the other way and perches on that gnarled arbutus
Mhm.
and just sits there. I'm like, man, you're right there. This is so cool. And then I start seeing this shape in the water below. And because I'm so high, the sun is just like piercing through the water. And I can see this like dark shape, big,
Mhm.
like as big as a ship is coming up. And I'm like, what is that? A whale? What is this? Because there's orca and there's humpback. And so I'm up there just looking like, what is this? And then I see the eagle's noticing it. And then an osprey comes from the other, like I'm watching it all the way from the other island, just booking it. I'm like, what's happening? Another bird coming towards this black spot. And then it starts coming up to the surface, and it's like this huge shoal of fish. And it comes to the surface, and that osprey's down, and the eagle leaves its perch and goes down, and that other eagle swoops around and it goes down, and it's like dive bombers. And I'm thinking, what the heck is happening? And more birds coming from other islands just making their way to this shoal of fish. And I'm thinking, is anybody else seeing this? And then seals start coming up from underneath, and it's just crazy like feast on this fish. And I'm just sitting there watching it all. And then it kind of disperses and everybody goes home and eats their lunch on their branch and
That's amazing.
hangs out. And I just sitting there being like, wow. And it was a pretty strong sense of like provision.
Yeah.
Like, like when you're working and you're with your friends and you get that sense of like you're cared for, you have everything you need, even if it was really rough or you're going through a really hard time, a sense of like, it's okay. Look at all this beauty around me. There's all of this good in my life.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty spectacular moment.
Yeah.
And I remember walking home after that feeling like, oh man, I'm not alone in this world.
Yep.
And there is enough. And just felt a different confidence that whatever is going to happen, it's going to be okay.
That's something really special the trades kind of give you, is that cause and effect reality of like that sweat equity that's put in, the lessons that's learned, and that moment to be like, I'm doing something that I'm providing for myself, I'm providing for my family. There's plenty to be thankful for.
Yeah.
And to take stock like that is such a healthy, good thing to do. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I get a picture in my head as you're saying that. It's such a beautiful visual picture. I mean, I could just hear David Attenborough explaining that to me with his awesome. I think you actually took me there and showed me that spot, because as you explained it, I'm like, you took me on this little trail and showed me the most epic view.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. I mean, if I knew we were trespassing, I probably wouldn't have gone, but.
Well, there was a bunch of times on Pender. I don't know what the deal was. Christy used to joke. She's like, I don't know. You're like Cinderella, whoever it is. No, Snow White, where she goes and she's singing in the woods and all the birds come.
Okay.
And all the animals are like dancing around.
Yeah.
Because I'd go out like in my kayak, and a seal would come and check me out, and an eagle flew right over me. I could feel the wind from his wings, and he caught a fish right on the other side. And we'd be fishing and catch some like bottom feeder, throw it out on the water 6 feet off, and an eagle would come and grab it right off the boat. And orca, like a whole pod of orca, would swim right past us.
That's amazing.
And a mother with her calf would go right under the boat. Like it was just
magical
all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, this is amazing. And other people who'd lived there for years hadn't seen the whales or hadn't seen porpoises and different things. And every time we'd go out, it was just I live in this remarkable place. It's just so abundant
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Amazing experience.
Luke, have you had any yet of those kind of moments transitioning to obviously, it's not like we're in here and there's these beautiful views, but have you had any of those type of
Yeah, I mean,
moments here?
there's definitely times in the very recent past where, that I've kind of got the foundation set and people and roles, and there's still more development and stuff to be done, but
Mhm.
I've been able to get back on the machines and just kind of be a part of the production team. And I'm often like this last few weeks, not listening to music or podcasts. I'm
Mhm.
just like listening to the sounds of the shop, and I'm on my machine
Mhm.
and just taking it in, and just so grateful for the team that's around me, for the product that we're putting out,
Mhm.
for the mortgages that are being paid and kids being raised through what we've been able to build.
Mhm.
And there's a sense of satisfaction in that. That I'm proud of, but
Yep.
at the same time, I don't like grasp onto that and like take credit for it all. It's just the situation that we find ourselves in, where people are provided for, and we're doing something that means something, and offering into, the trades that we all came from. It's so special to kind of do this, for the people that we were in
Mhm.
years past.
Mhm.
It's pretty neat. So no, it's a exciting position to be in now, where I can take stock of it and really see the value and joy in it, and the relationship amongst all the staff. I mean, the
Sure.
fun that we have, and the foosball and ping pong tournaments and the potluck lunches and stuff, and
Yep.
and all that, all those special things. It's really great.
I think when people come into the storefront, I've noticed some pretty meaningful times when people come in and we're able to just chat about life and work, and they tell us about their job and what they're doing and their frustrations, and you they're able to, number one, get so excited about the belt, and they're can't wait to go to work the next day, but to also just connect with them on the frustrations of and challenges of work and the beauty of it at the same time.
Mhm.
And sometimes people will hang out and chat with us for over an hour just about life and work,
Mhm.
and be able to just connect on the meaningfulness of it and laugh at and share stories back and forth. And, just that genuine connection with other tradespeople,
Mhm.
of what that life and the struggle of that life, but the simplicity and beauty of it
Mhm.
is just really meaningful.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
to have them come in and feel seen and noticed, and that they have camaraderie here, that we're not just, because sometimes people come into the shop and they think I'm just an idiot salesman that doesn't know anything about the trades, and so they give me all kinds of sass and attitude. And we had one guy come in, and admittedly, I've been a salesman, worked at the Sony store, and had customers lose their marbles at me because I just simply said, "Hey, can I help you?" Yeah, right. You want to help me. You just want to sell me everything in this store. Our opinions of salesmen is probably pretty low in general. And so I get it. There's a certain standoffish behavior when it comes to people saying, "Hey, how can I help you?"
Well, and you kind of look like a I don't know.
Like,
I don't.
Douche.
I know something. So I could. Yeah.
you can understand. And so I was getting, and Luke was in his office, which, if you don't know the storefront space, there's a door, and Luke's in his office, and the door is open so he can hear this interaction about, like, I'm doing the general questions like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" And he's given me all kinds of "I'm better than you"
Mhm.
comments. And he's like, "Oh, I use these tools and this tools." And it's just getting, and I have a hard time with that type of behavior.
Mhm.
And usually my knee-jerk reaction is to be like, "Whatever, man. Apparently you can't find what you're looking for. That's too bad. I'm really sorry." And just kind of step back.
Yeah.
But Luke overhears, and he comes in, and he just goes up to the guy and is just very, like, black and white. "No, this is what this pouch is for. This is how I designed it. This is what it's good at. Oh yeah, I understand your point. Absolutely. But that's not how it works here. And this is what's going to work for you and why it won't. Oh yeah, I hear that complaint, but that's not how this works. It's like this." And just really, like, leaned into it. And I was, like, so happy to step behind the counter and grab my coffee and just take a nice long sip and watch
Totally.
as he just came out and was like, "No, this is how," and very respectfully, And the guy hung out for half an
That's
hour,
great.
45 minutes, and it was great. And they're telling stories. And I just couldn't, whatever it was, I don't know if that's just the tradesperson's test of, are you kind of a know-it-all idiot that doesn't really have any legitimate experience?
Mhm.
And Luke was able just to step in and take that. And I have legitimate experience, but I
Mhm.
just didn't feel like having that ego
Mhm.
contest,
Sure.
and was quite happy to just step back. And Luke could just come in and chat him up, and it was great. And the guys come back, and it's great.
Mhm.
But the nuance of working with tradespeople here, and genuinely enjoying them, and being able to interact, I love that stuff.
It's a pretty fascinating dynamic. I mean, it's a crude saying, but the whole like the dick measuring contest sort of thing, right? Like I think it comes out of like an insecurity that us as men have, and you want to be acknowledged as being like a master of your craft, and that you know what you're talking about, and I'm going to speak with authority, and I know what I'm talking about. And so you get all different sorts of people in here, you know, from people that come in that are like, I'm just starting my trade. I don't know what I want and why I would want it. Can you help me? And we try to work with those people. And then people who've like been up for quite a while, who have fairly general, broad, open perspective on things. And other guys who come in like, this is how it should be. This is how it is. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. And if you disagree, you must be a dummy, you know? And so having been in the trades world firsthand and having had employees and dealt with hard people, there's a reality of like, I really enjoy those challenges and that kind of engagement. And you have to be different things to different people and respect them where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun, you know, in this environment in the front end of the store, and seeing how you are so good at dealing with a certain type of personality, and it'll chat it up and have all kinds of like, there's times where there's like really deep conversation that takes place that you have people, I'm like, this is so great. This person feels honored and respected. And other people that come in and they want to take advantage and kind of be rammy and pushy and kind of be insulting to kind of promote their own sense of pride. And I'm like, I got his back. I'll come in and kind of like, I'll stand up to this person with respect.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, we'll debrief.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I hope me coming in, you know, was beneficial and appropriate and supportive, and not me being like, oh, let me do it for you.
No.
You know, so there's like discussion behind the scenes that we're having to be like, how do we strategically be respectful, not get pushed around, you know, but still hear someone's point of view and come to a place of understanding. And then the day, if it doesn't work for them, that's okay.
Yeah.
There's no high pressure sales here whatsoever. And it's a part of the business I never really anticipated or thought about, but I've really come to enjoy. It's great. It's just that interaction, and every person brings their own challenge and characteristic into the space, and we've got to learn how to respond respectfully and not be pushed around and not be pushy ourselves. You know, and guys won't care how much you say, you know, until they kind of hear your experience and hear the background of why you've done. Like, oh, okay, so you have done that for that reason. That actually has some credibility. Okay, I hear what you're saying now. Now we're discussing. You know, it's the social media stuff that is frustrating, where people give from the other side of a screen or a keyboard some critical comment, and there's no invitation to discussion, nothing social about it at all. It's just them shooting darts, you know, from behind this impenetrable wall where they won't even receive a comment.
What was the phrase Mark talked about it this morning? The keyboard something?
Keyboard carpenters but at the same time, even those critics that, you know, we could say, oh, they're probably just behind a keyboard, don't talk about. No, they might be legitimate, good craftspeople.
Yeah.
But they've got a fairly narrow-minded, critical view of things, and to each their own. But it's social media. Let's be social, which means let's have some interaction with respect and acknowledge each other's differences and points of view and have a discussion. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
I
so
think
it's pretty interesting.
I think the element of curiosity is really, really important. And it's interesting because I can tell which customers I can handle. Like I might be irritated by something, but I'm like, oh, this is great. And same with you. And we can shine with different customers. And so but the element of curiosity is really important. Like to be curious to the point of, I want to hear you out, but I know the customer that is typically more challenging for Luke is simple for me because I'm happy to take the time. And Luke's busy and he's got things. And if somebody's like telling stories and want to ask lots of questions and kind of, oh yeah, and but how about, and that kind of thing is like, well, Luke's got about this much runway, and if you're pushing the end, he's going to start coming up with an escape plan, and I can see when Luke's figuring out his escape plan, and then I can come in. And so it's the same. It's nice. Usually, if there's a big ego in the room, I'm like, I'm going to escape, and I'm moving out, and then Luke can handle that really well. So, but that same with social media. Like, if you can be curious and make space to like get to know why someone's opinion is what it is, everybody benefits. Yep. But it's hard for people when the egos get in the way and stuff. But
that's pretty fun. Well, that was a pleasure, gentlemen. That was great. Lots of fun and some depth and meaning, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. Thanks for the road cone outfit. It's awesome.
Careful now.
Hopefully they keep it together.
Go Oilers.
Go Oilers. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and take care. We'll catch up again next time.